Hey guys, Zack here, and this is why you guys should consider watching the Animaniacs 2020 reboot. Okay, so maybe reboot isn't the right word. It's technically, by all accounts, a sequel to the original series. So, if you guys don't know, the original Animaniacs was this big variety show cartoon about three, I don't really know, nobody really knows what they are, but these three things called the Warners. The Warner Brothers, obvious joke because it's made by Warner Brothers, but the Warner Brothers, Yakko and Wacko, and their sister and their little sister Dot. So, and basically the entire idea surrounding the concept was that they would basically go from area to area and just use their zany antics to just mess with the people there. And the entire thing about the show was that it just made all these meta commentary jokes about the world and all these things. And it was also full of educational songs and things like that. It was a kids show basically, but it also developed a reputation among adults because let's just say there were a lot of risque jokes thrown in that the kids kind of didn't get. So yeah, they threw in a lot of innuendos for the adults that wound up getting stuck watching the show, and for that reason it started to gain a cult following among adult fans, and it quickly became a fan favorite. And the show ran from 1993 to 1998 and was, at which point it went off the air for 22 years until the reboot happened, and as I said, it's technically a sequel. So it's set 22 years after the fact, and the show itself just kind of makes several references to the old show from the 1990s. Case in point, the first thing they did, like as an actual meta joke, is about the show itself. The entire first episode, the Warner siblings segment is just about how the show's been rebooted, and about how the Warners haven't actually seen any action in 22 years, which is kind of part of the joke. So yeah, it does continue to capture the same essence that the original had, if you guys remember the original from way back when, and if not, then if you guys want to experience it fresh, both are on Hulu. So yeah, not only did Hulu revive the series, but they also now own the rights to the original and are streaming it on their platform as well. So if you want to catch up with the original series and want in preparation for the reboot, both are on Hulu now as part of their programming blocks. I find it's kind of I decided to make this video specifically because I don't feel like the Animaniacs would translate well as a review. Basically, that's why I decided to make one of these instead of making a fully fledged review out of it, because the Warner Brothers Animaniacs thing has Animaniacs has a lot of visual humor that doesn't really translate well into a review. Case in point, they do a very literal Jurassic Park segment because they've been reanimated. That's the joke. So yeah, they do an entire segment at the start of the first episode about how Steven Spielberg reanimated them in a very literal sense, and basically under Steven Spielberg's direction, they've decided to reboot the show, which is what the joke is, and that's the entire purpose of the first episode, that the show got rebooted and the Warners actually sold out according to themselves. So yeah. The entire joke just has this big. So the entire show, the whole joke is that it just makes fun of a whole bunch of stuff. It makes fun. It basically, they have at the start of the first episode, they do a catch-up song up to 2020, but then they openly admit that they actually stopped writing the show at 2018, and that's where they wound up being since the whole thing is that they have meta commentary, and they make fun of the fact that that the writers stopped writing the show after 2018 and started the animating from 2018 to 2020. So yeah, that's one of the jokes they make, that they haven't been around that they kind of missed 2 years because the writers only wrote only wrote jokes up through 2018. So yeah. They didn't really have any information to go on, so they just kind of make up stuff as they go. And I should mention, the show itself is actually split into 2 segments. There's the Animaniacs section, which is kind of the main bulk of the show, but then there's also Pinky and the Brain, which was a segment from the previous iteration as well. And usually the show has both of those segments, although not always. And occasionally they throw in some extra segments as well. But basically, the premise of Animaniacs is that they just screw with everybody and make as many meta jokes as they can. And the concept of Pinky and the Brain is that it's 2 lab rats who want to take over the world, but they're not very good at it. So, yeah, I like the show. So I like the show because, for the most part, as I said, there's a lot of meta commentary, and that's why the show got popular in the first place. But basically, they like to poke fun at everything, and that's just what the show is. That's all it is. Pinky and the Brain is probably one of the more interesting parts of it because I like it because it's one of those things where they kind of make fun of how convoluted the Brain's plans are to take over the world by having him come up with some convoluted solution, and the more dim-witted Pinky is just kind of along for the ride. Although I should mention that Pinky is the more fun-loving one, albeit he's not exactly the brightest tool in the shed, but occasionally the roles are reversed. It occasionally shows that the brain does indeed genuinely care for Pinky and wants to, does genuinely consider him a friend. And Pinky, while a bit slower than the Brain, isn't stupid. There's a couple of iterations in the reboot where where his outside the box imagination actually enables him to save the day, whereas the more analytical Brain cannot. So, yeah. It's pretty smart. The show itself is pretty smart, pretty clever, and a lot of the jokes happen in a fraction of a second. So, as I said, it's very hard to keep up and do a review of the whole thing. So that's why I'm making this video. But yeah, I recommend checking Animaniacs out if you're a fan of the older Animaniacs and want to see where the reboot has led them. Then by all means check out the reboot. Although I should mention there is one thing that they do eventually address in the show itself, oddly enough, but I should bring up that there's very few returning characters from the original Animaniacs. For reasons that are eventually explained in episode 5. So if you guys are curious, then check it out up to at least episode 5. But basically very few of the returning characters, except for the security guard Ralph, comes back. For the most part, most of the recurring characters were removed, with the exception of Ralph. Again, for reasons that are explained in episode 5, I don't want to spoil it, but if you were a fan of the original Animaniacs because of all the variety of characters, you may be a little bit disappointed in that regard, because it doesn't really have all the returning characters. Again, episode 5 explains why that is. It's not because they just decided not to bring them back. There's actually a joke that's actually associated with an episode they actually explain, but basically overall this series is just one of those things where it's just like one fast joke after another. It makes a lot of meta commentary. It's very funny. I do recommend it. But yeah, if you guys want to check out the reboot of Animaniacs, again, it's on Hulu. It's only like a Hulu subscription is only like $5 or something. It's only like $5-6, so it's not terribly expensive unless you want to spring for the expensive version of Hulu, which is more closer to $12-13. But yeah, a Hulu subscription isn't terribly expensive, so if you want to, at the very least, buy a free trial and then maybe cancel after you're done with Animaniacs, or even just stick around and watch the original, then yeah, both versions of Animaniacs are on Hulu, so if you want to check it out, then be sure to go do that. I also left a link to Hulu in the description, so yeah, you can check it out that way if you don't want to bother Googling it. But in any case, yeah, if you guys want to check out Animaniacs, go right ahead. But in any case, yeah, I hope I was able to convince some of you that maybe Animaniacs is worth checking out. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, be sure to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter in the description below. And also be sure to check out my Patreon in the description below as well. It's only a couple bucks a month. It really helps me out, and you guys get access to a bunch of cool perks. I'm always saying thanks, so be sure to check those out in the description below as well. But in any case, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!